Welcome everyone to the post-crisis chat. I'm your co-host Cookie, and with me is the ever-present, ever-handsome.
I am Randy. Thank you, everybody, for being here. If you're a first time viewer, welcome. Please remember to like the video, and if you like our content, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification so you can be notified next week when we upload the next episode.
And if you're not a first-time subscriber, welcome back. We appreciate you coming back and checking us out again. We are so thankful to have you here. And if we could give you money, we would, but instead, you just have to look at our pretty faces.
Please check us out on Blue Sky and Patreon. Patrons do get access to exclusive content.
Please be advised that we will be talking about 40-year-old spoilers for a comic book that, like I said, is 40 years old. So if you haven't read it, you probably shouldn't be watching this. And today's issue is Saga of the Swamp Thing number 28. I'm sorry that I had to look at the numbering, but my brain worked no good. So this is written by, of course, Alan Moore, because he did a long run on the Saga of the Swamp Thing. And on the cover of this issue, if you look right here, you can see it says Stephen Bissette. But when you open the book up, you find out that Sean McManus is actually the penciler of this issue. Who was the inker? I didn't catch that.
I was also Sean McManus.
See, that explains it because usually when an artist inks their own work, it always turns out really good. And I thought the art in this was really cool.
I agree. And actually, I'm reading this in the trade paperback. In the trade paperback, there is a portion of the introduction that says the reason that Sean McManus did the pencils and inks on this issue was to allow Stephen Bissette to catch up. McManus was a fill-in artist for this issue.
Which, I mean, it tracks a lot of comics. They will have fill-in issues. If you're a longtime comic book fan, you're going to be familiar with this concept. There's always somebody to fill in between story arcs and stuff. So it's not a big deal. I just always find it hilarious when they forget to mention on the cover like who the actual artist is. Because I feel like the artist that does the book is probably reading it, being like, dude, what's up?
So we open this issue with Swamp Thing digging a hole in the middle of the swamp. The title of this issue is The Burial.
Which I should have realized what this was going to be once I saw the title, and then when I looked at I saw the cover, but for some reason reading it, I was kind of wondering like, okay, where is this going?
Well, we get Swamp Thing asking how deep does the hole need to be. He says he thinks to himself, "I've been digging forever."
Which, I mean, for most people, okay, like you and me digging a hole, it would probably take a long time. If I'm digging a grave for somebody or something, I'm probably going to be out there maybe 8 hours because I'm weak. I have about maybe like the strength of a 7-year-old girl. So it's gonna be a little bit rough. But Swamp Thing is a big dude, superpowers, let alone he controls plants because he's part of the green basically now. So I feel like he could have just been sitting on the sidelines with like a Mai Tai and just having like some vines digging out a big space or something.
I hadn't thought about that, but you're absolutely right. It doesn't make a lot of sense in the moment that he's doing the digging himself physically. Anyway, then we switch to Abby standing in the swamp, admiring how nice the swamp looks in autumn. I kind of appreciate the call back to an earlier issue when Abby mentioned that Swamp Thing's skin colors are changing because autumn is coming on.
Yeah, I like that there was a callback to it because it was kind of like a little bit of continuity connecting stuff so you don't feel like, they're just riding by the seat of their pants here. I do want to say I felt a little put off by how happy-go-lucky Abby felt in this issue. When the last few issues, she's been very whiny, complainy, and just like you just want to look at her and be like, just shut up for a second.
Well, it's interesting you note that because my very next note on the issue says Abby seems happier in this issue than she has been in the past. And Swamp Thing asks, "How are things going with Matt?" Abby mentions that Matt has improved his attitude and stopped drinking and is also out there looking for a new house for
Which really makes sense because you would have to stop drinking because if he's drinking, he's going to drown that fly.
them. Yes, that yeah. Well, I mean, it did go into his mouth, so it would stand to reason that the fly is in his stomach now. I'm not sure.
That's the only place. I mean, like, see, that's why maybe the fly should have went in like the ear or something. I mean, it's not like he had much in between there, anyways. So it could have like filled in for the rest of that dead brain.
Editor's note. See last episode if you want to know more about what we're talking about. Also, Abby also mentions that things at Elysium Lawns are going better. The house where the autistic kids stay. She mentions that the demon from the previous issue was explained away as mass hysteria. That makes sense. I'm saying that with sarcasm.
Yeah. I mean, it's a comic book. You're in the swamp. I mean, it there's probably a lot of mass hysteria going on down there. I mean, maybe a lot of alcohol use, stuff like that. So I mean, you just had like a whole town destroyed by the Floronic Man like a few issues ago. So people are probably just like used to weird crap happening.
I'm going to spoil things a little bit because as we get further into this, we're going to start reading in the near future. Once we get done with Swamp Thing, we're going to go to Suicide Squad next. And Suicide Squad takes place very near to where Swamp Thing takes place in Louisiana. And there are a couple of mentions of weird things happening in the swamp, monsters and things like that in Suicide Squad. So it's one place I will say that DC was really on top of things with their continuity. So anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic, but since you brought up what happened to the town and mass hysteria, I did want to mention that it does get mentioned elsewhere in the DC universe in comics around this time. But we'll get there eventually. One other observation that Abby makes is that the flies seem to be sticking around for a long time this year. Hmm.
That that's funny. I didn't actually catch that when I read it the first time, and I think it's because until last episode when you mentioned that it was a fly, when I looked at it, it looked like a bee to me for some reason. So
Hmm.
that would explain why I didn't catch that at the time.
Well, it could be the poor art from Stephen Bissette being rushed on the book.
That's a good point.
Swamp Thing gets upset at Abby calling him Alec. He says, I'm not Alec Holland anymore. Alec Holland is dead. And then Swamp Thing storms off. And then we get back to where we were at the beginning of the book with Swamp Thing digging a hole.
Yeah, it should be noted though that the reason he got upset was because he got freaked out because he saw the ghost of Alec. So it's like there was a logical reason of why he was freaked out or why he was upset at Abby for calling him Alec.
I may have missed that.
It's okay. You're allowed to make mistakes every now and then. Once per episode, you can make one mistake.
I'll keep that in mind. I'll keep a tally. So Swamp Thing seems to be continuing to have some confusion about whether he is Swamp Thing or whether he is Alec Holland.
I don't know. To me, this was a little weird only because it felt like we kind of tied that up a few issues ago.
I agree.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know. It's like I felt like, and I guess I'll give my full review at the end of how I felt about it. But yeah, like at the time, I was kind of like, didn't we already kind of go down this road?
Yeah, and we're gonna talk more about. I have thoughts on that too as we go on. We'll go through the issue and then we'll kind of do more in the summation. But yeah, I agree with you. He feels like he's being haunted by himself. At this point, I did know that he looks up and sees the ghost of Alec and asks the ghost not to leave, but the ghost continues to walk away, and Swamp Thing follows him. So was the ghost there present when he was talking to Abby earlier, and I just missed that?
Yeah, he showed up in a panel where he looked up because I didn't know
Okay.
it was him until later on.
Okay. So Swamp Thing follows the ghost of Alec, and they end up where the house that blew up and created this version of Swamp Thing in the first place is still standing, but barely. Then we cut to a scene of Alec and his wife getting ready for bed and interacting in very positive ways with each other. They seem very comfortable and happy with each other.
I mean, they should be, right? I mean, they're husband and wife, so I was like, why wouldn't they be? But it was a nice touching moment. I think up until that point, I don't recall ever seeing the two of them together.
What struck me about it is this personality and feel, the vibe of this Alec is different than Swamp Thing's vibe.
Yeah, but he's human. So it kind of, which I feel like it kind of makes sense of why he would also be so bitter about being stuck with the memories of Alec, because if this is the stuff that's going on in your head, this is the stuff that you're reliving, and that would probably be torture. That you're never, like before, you were never going to have that life again because you were a man turned into a monster, and now you find out you weren't even the man. You're just stuck with the man's memories. Like that's
Yeah,
got to be a real like head trip.
no doubt. And maybe that's a good explanation for why he's struggling with it again. I don't know. Maybe it's not. I don't think it is. But just throwing that out there as a possibility. Anyway, so next we see Swamp Thing remembering a confrontation with armed men from back when he was Alec Holland. He remembers how Alec got knocked out, and Swamp Thing is pleading with the memory of Alec to get up and change things. And then we get a memory of Alec finding dynamite underneath his lab table. He goes to try to defuse it, and it blows up, throwing him out into the swamp. And which, of course, is the origin of Swamp Thing that we have seen before in past issues. I, I don't like. It seems weird that he's asking Alec to change things because like previously he accepted he was Swamp Thing, but now he's almost saying I don't want to be Swamp Thing, and it seems
Yeah,
like
that's kind
out
of
of
what I
character at this point.
yeah, that's kind of what I took from it. Was it kind of felt like him basically telling Alec to do that would mean he wouldn't exist then, like he wouldn't ever come into being. And was that what they kind of wanted to have him do? Like, is he dealing with some kind of depression of existence? Does he not want to exist as Swamp Thing?
Yeah, but it seems like he accepted it and liked it before, but I don't know. I guess your feelings on things can change over time. I don't know. It just seemed out of character at this point.
Yeah, it felt like this is the kind of stuff that should have happened the first time around when we were going through all this stuff.
Right. And then we get a second Swamp Thing appearing out of the swamp, who is a different color than the Swamp Thing we're familiar with. He's kind of a lighter yellow shade as opposed to the greens and browns that we're used to.
Yeah, it's like the old school looking Swamp Thing. Because I mean, you could tell the design was a little different. I mean, McManus has a different art style to him than Bissette, so it's like you're not going to see the detail that Bissette puts into Swamp Thing, but you could still see the difference between old school and new school. I was just personally hoping, and this is just my silly brain of once they came face to face, I wanted that like old school cartoon gimmick of like where the guy goes in front of the mirror and there's a guy that looks in front of him and they're just doing the big like like gestures and stuff like that. If we could have got that, I just would have died laughing. I would have loved it.
That would have been kind of cool. But what happens is the new Swamp Thing points out into the swamp, and our established Swamp Thing asks him if there's something under the mud. And then the new Swamp Thing disappears.
It was like a very Star Wars esque kind of moment of like the Force Ghost disappearing into nothing, and
Hmm.
basically just leading him to what he's there for, which is
You
kind of
sorry.
go ahead.
No, you just made me realize that maybe that was the green communicating with Swamp Thing as himself.
Oh, that would have been interesting. I didn't even think about that. That would be kind of cool if that's what it was.
That makes a lot more things in this issue fall into place for me. All right, let's
It,
get through this and we can talk more about this at the end, but I want to explore this. So we find out that Swamp Thing was digging a grave, but he has no body to put in it. So we find out that Swamp Thing was digging a grave. Then we see Swamp Thing go underwater and retrieve Alec Holland's bones from deep in the swamp. Then we see Swamp Thing put Alec Holland's bones to rest.
which I mean that kind of makes sense that he probably should have done that before. But I think he even said, I think he addressed it like he never thought the body had survived because he thought he was Alex. So it's like he never ever imagined looking for the body. So that kind of makes sense of like now with the green, maybe that's what was going on was like, oh, okay, this is your chance to put that to rest, and now we're going to move on to you
Mm.
are not him.
And then he puts just a stick in the ground as a marker. And I found that quite poignant because, you know, Swamp Thing would know the difference between sticks because of his nature. Like, all of those sticks may look very much the same to us, but each one is unique and he knows what each one symbolizes, where it came from, where it's been.
Yeah, he's definitely a plant nerd.
Then we see the ghost of Alec Holland smiling because his bones have finally been buried. Swamp Thing walks off, noting that he did not look back.
Part of me thought like maybe he should have looked back, but I guess I could see like maybe it's better not to look back to just kind of leave it behind. Of he has to go be Swamp Thing now, be part of the green, but looking back would just be kind of like maybe either too painful or just like acknowledging. I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I just couldn't figure out what the exact reason. Like, why wouldn't you look?
I think it's to symbolize that he's not looking back at Alec anymore. Which, again, I think we kind of already got that previously, but maybe it was something that was bothering him still.
Yeah,
Or
it's
we know that this is a magical universe and we know that ghosts can exist in this universe. Maybe it was literally the ghost of Alec Holland haunting Swamp Thing, saying, "Hey, put me to rest."
yeah. Actually, that could work too. Like maybe it was the ghost of Alec, not just saying put me to rest, but it's like also telling him, you know, you're not me, so you don't need to hold on to this anymore. It's put me to rest and move on with your existence. You don't need to be holding on to me anymore.
And the ghost of Alec Holland works together with the Green. The Green produces the other Swamp Thing to communicate with Swamp Thing what needs to be done. See, I originally gave this issue a lot lower of a rating that I'm going to end up giving it now that I've discussed it with you and we've kind of put things together. But I think that the issue makes a lot more sense.
We've kind of dug a little bit deeper with the discussion of like now there are some things that maybe didn't click before, and I'm starting to kind of look at it. I still liked the issue. And I think I like the issue because even though we've dealt with it in the past, this one felt a little bit more heartfelt. It was kind of like a nice, especially it was a nice welcome break from the horror. We've had so much horror elements. Like even when he was dealing with this issue in the past, it was done in a horror central kind of way. So this was kind of that nice calm moment of just him moving on, and it felt like a little bit more heartfelt.
When I was originally going back and doing my notes on this, I gave the issue 1.5 out of 5 blue herons. And the reason I said that originally was so I liked the art on the book. I thought the art was great. I even put in my notes, I like the fill in artists more than I do the regular artists. All the details were where they should be. The facial expressions were really good. I was just really happy with the art in this issue. And that's really where a vast majority of my score came from for the issue. I originally said the story, on the other hand, was boring because it was a rehash of Swamp Thing's origins and it didn't advance the story at all.
Hmm.
And I get why, especially back in the day, issues like this needed to exist because back issues weren't as common as they are today. Collected editions weren't as common as they are today. You didn't have Wikipedia, so you could go up and look and see. what happened in the issue. So I get why they want to tell the origin story again. And I thought it was just boring because it was just a rehash. I'm rethinking that now because of our discussion. I'm actually going to increase it to 2.5 because we kind of figured out maybe it was the green and the ghost of Alec Holland, which again is that piece I missed at the beginning was the ghost.
That's fair. I think I'm going to give it a 2.5 Blue Heron because I liked, like I said, to me there was a lot of heart in it that kind of made me feel like, oh, okay, this is like a hopeful story. This was, it felt kind of touching at times. I loved the artwork. I thought the art was very refreshing. I liked how we kind of just maybe exposed a mystery behind the purpose of everything that we didn't see before. So it's like there's a couple things that kind of added up that really, really worked for me. And I loved the scene with him and his wife. Like thinking back on it now, I was like, it was kind of touching. Like you didn't get to see much of his previous life other than the accident. So it was kind of cool seeing that a little bit of like, okay, he was more than just like a lab nerd. He was a human being. He had a wife. He was in love. He, was planning a future and everything.
When I originally read this, I thought that this issue was just really unnecessary. I thought it was just stuck there because monthly artists couldn't keep up, and Alan Moore had to pull something out of his butt to, fill in an issue maybe that didn't advance the story too much. But again, after discussing it, I think more highly of it than I did previously. But I also put in my notes that this was my least favorite issue of Swamp Thing so far, and I still kind of agree with that.
I mean, it doesn't advance the story. It really doesn't. I feel like maybe it's a little bit of like what you said, that it was just a filler, that they want the main story to be drawn by Bissette, and so okay, he needs some time off. Let's do the fill-in artist. Let's have a fill-in issue because even the writing felt a little flat compared to. It's like Alan Moore's writing is very wordy, and this was not wordy. I mean, to
Hmm.
kind of put it in perspective, the last issue that we covered that I read, I had to read it 3 times, partially because I fell asleep while reading part of it because I was tired and I was like, okay, I'm going to fall asleep. And then partially because I had to go back and double check some stuff because there was a lot going on and the poetry stuff kind of threw me off. I read this sucker like that. And you
Hmm.
probably can't hear my snap because I suck at snapping, but there was a snap there. But it was a real quick read because there wasn't a lot to like do with it. It wasn't very wordy. You just breezed through it, and that's not typically Alan Moore.
Yeah, you're right about that. One thing I also did want to mention was the cover, which is ironic because the cover was done by Stephen Bissette. And this cover is old school horror, Swamp Thing carrying bones up out of the swamp. I mean, I'm getting a lot of glare.
Here, let me try this. Let me take it out of the bag.
Yeah, okay. So I got to mention this cover. This cover is reminiscent of old school horror movie posters. It's Swamp Thing carrying these bones up out of the swamp and everything just dripping off of him. That cover was by Stephen Bissette, and that cover is amazing. Like, I want to see Bissette do this kind of work all the time. And it's ironic because it was a fill-in artist. It's also ironic because there wasn't a whole lot of horror element to the story, but that cover is just the opposite of both of those things. And I'm just like, I want this from Bissett all the time.
It was really good. And did you hear that? Did you hear that cover? Randy loves you. He loves you.
I do.
But yeah, no, the covers are getting better. I mean, with the exception of 27, which was kind of a weak cover, but it's like the covers are starting to get a little bit better with that because that's a damn good cover. That's the kind of horror you expect from, like you said, a horror comic book.
Yeah, no, that was really good. And it is relevant to what's in the story, which is One thing I maybe don't love about modern comics, they give you covers that have nothing to do with what's going on inside the book.
Oh, you mean like if Batman is like jumping off of like the Eiffel Tower, fighting Bane, Clayface, and all that stuff, and then you like flip through it, and it's like, he's having tea with Selena Kyle and Alfred or something like that, and you're like,
Exactly.
where is this scene?
Yeah, and Ultimate Marvel Universe that's being published right now, it's particularly egregious. They show things on the cover that are just not relevant to the story.
Uh, don't tell me that because I've got a lot of catching up to do, and now I'm worried.
No, I mean, read the stories. The stories are good. I'm just saying that the cover doesn't match the interior. And no, I'm not. That's not
Yeah,
some kind of a euphemism for anything. It's literally.
it no, I mean it's understandable. I mean there's times where I feel like I agree. Modern comics, there's times where stuff like that happens, and it's a little irritating because you're expecting stuff to happen. And I
Mhm.
like the 80s with typically what you see, even though the scene may not happen, but like you said, it at least is relevant to what is going on in the story. It's kind of giving you a preview of, okay, pick up this issue because what you're seeing here essentially is happening.
Well, I think that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Don't forget, we got the Patreon. If you want to read the book, I'm going to put a link down below, an Amazon affiliate link. You can support the channel. We'll get a little bit of money from the purchase, and it doesn't change your cost to buy the book any. It's just an easy way to support the channel if you want to read along with us. I'm going to include a link to the box set that includes all the trade paperbacks we're going to be talking about. I'll include the original trade paperback, a link to that, and maybe even a link to the Alan Moore Absolute Edition. So, if you want to help support us, pick one of those up.
Yeah, definitely support us. I mean, I know I joke around and say like, give us money, like I'm, basically just prostituting the channel and stuff. But hey, if you give us money, we can get better equipment. We can get, I mean, the lighting in here is a little weird at times. I can have like a better computer, maybe. Find a babysitter for my cat because if you ever see me looking around or screaming in pain, it's because my cat is doing something. So, the money will help with that stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We hope to see you next week.